Hi, Brian.
Hello, Denise. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I'm on a headset today, and I usually am not. So if I'm shouting, if somebody needs to tell me to tone it down.
You can always give it to the dogs, Denise.
That's why I'm on the headset. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Dawn.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Dawn, I just asked you to, if it's okay also with you, I'll just go ahead and open the meeting and read the script, and then I'll turn it over to the both of you to open your meetings and do the, but I'll take one for the team.
I will forego the script for today.
I know. Don't beg me, Dawn, to do it. I know. So. What time is it? Just 4 o'clock, but I'll wait for a few more minutes. Hi, Rick.
Good afternoon.
Catherine, can you please put yours on mute? Thank you. Just gonna wait another couple of minutes. We're missing a couple folks.
Denise, on our end, I know that Fritz McClure is in transit and he won't be able to be here. So that's one less not to wait for.
Okay, thank you. I'm just waiting. I don't see Joe Grouse yet, unless he's just not on my screen. We're up to 2 screens now. I'll start in just a minute, and maybe they'll pop on while I'm reading the exciting script. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and open the Monday, April 5th Finance Committee meeting, joint meeting together with the Select Board and the Planning Board. And with that, we are now using Zoom webinar for meetings, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Please use first and last names. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised. The YouTube chat will no longer be enabled. All questions should be directed through the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, Chair of the Nantucket Finance Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. And starting with George, I see you first.
Aye.
Thank you. Peter Schaefer.
Aye.
Stephen.
Here.
And Jill.
Here.
Thank you. And I've got to unfortunately go to a second screen. And that's it for Finance Committee. Wait a minute, are we a quorum? Count up 5. Denise, Stephen. Yes, okay, good. All right, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. So that would be Libby Gibson.
Here.
Erica Mooney.
Present.
Thank you. Rick Sears.
Here.
Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
Thank you. Leslie Snell.
Here.
Thank you. And I think I saw Andrew Vorse. He might be on page 2.
Yes, here.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep.
And Rachel, are you Rachel's iPad? Rachel Day?
Yes, I am. I'm trying to change it right now.
Thanks, Rachel. Good guess on my side. Okay. Look at that. Another 20 Zoom meetings and I'll be good at this. Good at
Catherine and Sarah also. Denise, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Judith. Catherine?
Here.
Thank you. And Sarah's on my second page. Sarah? I don't see a Sarah. I don't have a Sarah on my screen. Okay,
No.
all right. If I've missed anybody, Judith and Dawn, you can catch them when you go through, please, when you call your roll call. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Finance Committee, Select Board, and Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment as noted. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude, we will go down. We will ask any of the other members if they have any questions, comments. There will be no motions. All motions were completed by last week. And then please remember to mute your computer or phone when you're not speaking. And please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you. And if any members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Can I get an approval of the agenda? Finance Committee starting first, can I have a motion, a second, and then we'll go through roll call.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Peter. Have a second? Thank you, George. Okay, by roll call, George.
Aye.
Thank you, Peter.
Aye.
Let's see, Stephen,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Joanna.
Aye.
Thank you. And nobody on page 2. This page 1 and 2 is no fun at all. Okay, I will turn it over at this point to Dawn, and I'll let you do your roll call for opening up the select board meeting.
Thank you, Denise. I will call the April 5th Select Board meeting to order. By roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Present.
Jason Bridges,
Here.
Christy Ferrantella,
Here.
and I don't think that Matt Fee has come on.
I just let him in.
Oh, Matt Fee, can you hear me? He's connecting still. One moment. Hi, Matt, can you hear me? We're just calling to order.
Hey, yeah, I can. Might having a little trouble, but I got there.
Okay, good afternoon. That concludes my board. Judith Wegner, turn it over to you.
Thank you. I call the planning board meeting of April 5th, 2021, jointly with the select board and finance committee to order by roll call, please. Nat Lowell.
Here.
Dave Iverson,
Here.
John Trudell,
Here.
Judith Wegner here. We have 2 alternates, I believe, Stephen Welch,
Here.
Campbell Sutton,
Present.
and as I mentioned, Fritz McClure is not available, so he's not here. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Okay, folks, so what we're going to do today is I will quickly just kind of go through what the Finance Committee has done in terms of the warrant articles. And then we had, let me see, 3, 6. We had 8 of them that had quite a lot of civic engagement and discussion during our review of them in this year. So we'll quickly go through those and tell you the motions that we motioned. And then with that, we'll open it up to questions for anyone on select board or planning board as to where we stand on either other articles or the ones that we had. And then after each article, I'll actually pause, so then that way we can have the discussion in that moment. So fundamentally what we did is there was, as you all know, there was 112 warrant articles. Some of them were carried over from last year, from ATM 2020. And we didn't reopen them, but we made the motions again on March 1st, consistent with what we motioned last year. And then we reviewed each article as it was presented. What we did for the citizen warrant articles, of which there was approximately, I want to say 51, I have to go back and check my notes. We invited each citizen to one of our FinCom meetings to come and present their article and answer any questions that we might have. In some cases, there was multiple attendance at multiple FinCom meetings. And then once the Finance Committee felt we had sufficient information, we then made our motions on those articles. So that is that was our process. We actually finished last on March 31st. So with all of our motions, and that's where we stand today. And so any questions or comments, any hands raised before I move on to the next part of our program? Nope. Okay. All right. So the articles that had the most discussion and civic engagement were Article 24, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which was sponsored by the Select Board for 7.5 million. And the Finance Committee made a motion to adopt. And Brian or Libby, if you want to add any color to that article in particular, but I'm assuming that the Select Board for sure is well versed on this article. See nodding and nobody wanting to go further. Perfect. The next one that was discussed. So what we did, just a side note, we took all the affordable housing articles together on one night because we didn't want to do them separately because, obviously some of them could potentially be redundant or mutually exclusive of each other. So that's how we actually reviewed it, so we could come up with what we felt was a sensible approach at looking at all of them. So Article 38, the Affordable and Year-Round Housing Stabilization Fund, we had a motion not to adopt. The logic behind this is that in Article 8 and Article 8, there will be an additional $375,000 in the operating budget that will be for the affordable housing expenses that were originally separate in Article 23. And then in Article 10, there will be $2 million, an additional $2 million in the capital appropriation budget for affordable housing. And so with that, we felt anybody on FinCom can also jump in here, but fundamentally we said that to start a housing stabilization fund where it would take 2/3 vote to get money out of the fund, and that 2/3 of the short-term rental tax would be put into this fund year over year. We felt that the approach that the town proposed would be a better solution for having money available soon for the affordable housing efforts versus putting it in the stabilization fund. In addition, there was an issue with if we take 2/3 as proposed out of the article, or out of the short-term rental tax, that would put the town in a budgetary deficit, and then we would have issues there. So Brian can speak to that a lot more eloquently than I will about to. But all those things combined, we felt that that's why we came up with motion not to adopt. Does anyone else on FinCom want to add to what I just said? No hands raised. Brian, did you want to add to what I just said?
I think you actually did a very good job of summarizing the discussion and where the FinCom landed, but I'm certainly happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Okay. Are there any questions? And because there's 2 screens of folks, you'll have to hit the raise hand button because you might be on screen number 2 and I can't see you waving.
Denise, this is Matt Fee.
Yes, Matt.
Just a question, just for the select board, really. We'll have if we want to put comments in on some of the other articles, if I have suggestions or comments, do we do that on that Wednesday?
Libby will have the answer to that. Matt?
Matt, you have a discussion scheduled for this Wednesday,
Okay.
yes, for that exact purpose. And you also have next week scheduled if you don't get at it all this week.
Right, and I'm thinking things like, what do you call it, Newtown Road and the pump. I think we should give a couple of those strong votes. So anyway, and I've got some comments on what we're talking about, but I can hold the ones that aren't contentious.
Okay. On Articles 8 and 10, just in case, for your information, we did do motion to adopt on both of those. So on the general fund operating budget and also on the capital program for fiscal year 2022. Okay. Matt, you might have missed the part where I said that as we discussed an article, if you want to have comments or questions then, rather than me get past them and then have to come back. So is there anything you wanted to comment on in respect of those articles I just spoke about?
Well, on number 10, what is the thought process on the 500,000 for the awning down at the jetties? Can that be included in, I didn't see it specified in anything. Is that taken out, or is that rolled into Article 10?
Brian, I'll defer to you on that one.
Sure. So that's a good question, Matt. And so in Article 10, you'll see that there's an authorization for a borrowing of $6.5 million for facilities. As I think everybody remembers, when Capcom, FinCom, and the Select Board got together, we did go through this. This was done to give the DPW access to money to continue to move forward with facility repairs and renovations. Because a lot of times when we were allocating money through the budget process, we would get to the point of getting bids or quotes and they would come in higher than the allocation, so projects would stop. So in my discussion with the town manager and our ultimate recommendation to Capcom and then ultimately to FinCom through that process was, if we could have a certain amount of money available, it would make the whole process easier. But there is certain set of guidelines that are being developed that would limit the amount of projects to the 3 or 4 most critical projects that would still have to go through a discussion with town administration and an approval by the town manager to pursue the projects. I know that to the question specifically about the awning, Matt, I know that it was specifically has been noted in capital program committee as something that was foreseen to be done, but I don't know that that would progress given the way that this has the last few weeks have gone with the structure that's there. So I don't envision that that's something that would be immediately done, even if there was a discussion about it with any of the authorization in the beginning.
Well, I just
you, Brian.
Sorry, Denise. Well, everyone's here. I
Go
just
ahead.
want to make sure that we should, as a town, should not be doing something that is against the lease and against the RFP that came out. And I just think that is a poor use of taxpayers' funds. So and I've written a minority report on this. I shared it with Denise to share with your board. I've shared it with my board. I just want it on the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Actually, Matt, I don't think I got that. So if you can resend it to me, I'm sorry, I don't think I got it because I would have. Did I respond
I'll
to you?
resend, Denise. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Dawn?
This is on our agenda for Wednesday night, and there's actually been a pretty significant change because the awning has been condemned and it's going to just have to come down. So it's actually become kind of a moot point, and we'll get into further detail on it on Wednesday night.
Thank you, Dawn. Okay. Anything else on Article 38 before I move on to Article 70? No? Okay, thank you. Article 70 is the bylaw amendment noise from the select board. And this was motion to adopt with 2 changes, which was to strike the leaf blower sentence in the last paragraph on one of the sections I didn't write down. And then to change the end time in the old historic district and the Sconset historic district was 5 p.m. and we changed it to 6 p.m. And so that was motion to adopt with those 2 caveats. So that's what we came up with. And many thanks to the noise committee for the hard work that they did to get this bylaw cleaned up and back in stronger shape, I guess I'll phrase it. And thanks to Leslie and team for that. I don't see any hands. So as a result of that, on Article 71, the bylaw amendment noise sponsored by Mr. Zemicki, we said motion take no action because it was actually a subset of what was going to happen in Article 70. And with that, we said that, and in discussions during our deliberations, there was some concern that having a article that was different than another article, having different criteria, that would make enforcement difficult. So we felt it was covered by Article 70, and that's where we landed on that. Any other additions to what I just said from the Finance Committee, who were actively involved in all the deliberations? And I don't see any. As a point of, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just mention, you mentioned the leaf blower clause. Actually, there's a separate article on leaf blowers. This the clause.
No,
that
this was just a sentence. I said the sentence in the
right, but
bottom
it was
of the clause.
all gas-powered power equipment.
Oh,
So I think
sorry.
that
Thank
was
you.
one of the
Thank
reasons
you,
we
Chris.
focused on that was there was a separate article on leaf blowers that I'm sure you'll get to, but it was actually much broader than that I think was one of the real big concerns, given the amount of outcry we had on just leaf blowers. The notion that such a broad concept was such a small part of a big, long article was where the concern was.
Thank you, Chris. That's correct. Campbell, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just had a quick question, and I think I just got a little confused by what was just stated. We are discussing Article 70, correct?
That's correct, Campbell.
So
And-
my main question was, what do you feel the significance is in the time change from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.? Why that extension of the time? Because that's usually people's dinner hour, so that's why I'm sort of.
Peter Schaefer, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think our thought process was that the time that was needed to get the work done, specifically for the gardeners, we didn't want to have them have to stop at 5 when they could go to 6. We didn't think that was a major implication in terms of people's dinner hour. And we did think it was a major implication in terms of them getting their work done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Campbell. Okay. Any other comments on the two noise articles? Okay, thank you. Article 74, the rental car bylaw amendment, airport town. We said motion not to adopt on this. In summary, we felt that this article was done quite quickly. Not to say you can't do a good article quite quickly, but the impact on the 5 local rental car companies was undetermined at the time. And so we felt that this could be better worked on as a project and come forward back in better shape than what we were reviewing. And so that was our recommendation. Does anyone want to add to that from the Finance Committee? And I see no hands. Any questions? I see no questions. Okay, thank you. Article 75, bylaw amendment, single-use plastics. So this came before us and we had a motion to adopt, striking the last 2 items, which at the time were still are, nip bottles and the paper water boxes. And then Mr. Mandel came back to us again, asking us to reconsider. And in reconsidering it, we came up with a motion to adopt, but we ended up striking 2 more items. So the items that are left in Article 75, and bear with me as I flip through my book, are the plastic. The plastic ban now includes flushable wipes containing plastic fibers, cloth fibers, or antibacterial chemicals, and plastic stick ear swabs. And so the other items of cellulose acetate, tobacco filters, clamshell containers, nip bottles, boxed water containers were struck. So that's where we ended up with that. No, I don't see any hands. Any further commentary? No? Okay. The 90 bylaw licensing of short-term rentals, we had ended up having 2 dedicated meetings on this topic as because of both the complexity of it and the impact to the local economy, and to get, all the input that we could get. I did actually solicit questions from the Finance Committee, which I sent to the article sponsors 3 weeks before their second appearance, so they would have time to go through them and come back to us with answers. And in the end, it was motion not to adopt was our recommendation. Any further input from Finance Committee? And then Matt, I'll get to you. Okay, Matt, question?
Yeah, question, because I think some of the issues that are raised are very important. And did you guys come to any conclusion on how, how to examine those or look at those in the future if this is not adopted? Was there any, did you guys come to any sort of thought process on how to examine this, how to understand the impacts and see, that type of thing, spending 2 meetings on it?
Our questions, we really went back to them and asked the sponsors to what do you believe is the financial impact to Nantucket on this article? We asked them to say, do you understand the community that you're trying to regulate? So is it a lot of people who have been coming here for 40 years with family homes, or is it, strictly short-term? And, so have you been able to stratify that? How many people did you speak to? 100? I mean, we gave them a set of questions, Matt, that would actually be a good review process, of which they didn't have answers. They didn't have sufficient answers for us to be compelled to say it. And I think one of the things that prior to my time on FinCom, I believe David Worth did something quite intelligent in terms of asking people who sponsored things in this type of article, that they would then ask for, can you please tell us what impact this could have on housing? What could it have on traffic? What could it have on the economics of Nantucket? Please fill out this survey for us so we can consider it. So it's probably sensible for us to resurrect that document again and ask in the future. But the questions that we gave them, there was, I think, about 15 questions, did actually provide a guideline to them. Now, in the end, they didn't have the answers to those questions. So yeah. But there was quite, to your point, Matt, there was quite a lot of work and thought and effort put into getting them to be able to communicate all the aspects of this that would be relevant and important for Nantucket.
And I'm not questioning that what you guys did at all. I'm just saying, I think that this has been, I think, important to bring up a lot of issues that we as a community, sustainable development, loss of housing, et cetera. And I think, is there a way, what is the way, and I'm not happy with parts of the article. I think there's an easier way to do it than if we did, than how they've proposed. But the point is, as a community, how are we going to get our arms around this? It's easy to sit in judgment and say, no, this isn't a good idea. But if an issue brings up a lot of, tentacles, sort of, that should be run down, how do we as a community organize to run those down for the benefit of the community? And that's, and I'm not saying you have an answer. I'm just putting that out there as a very important, very important for us, for our 3 groups. So.
Thank you, Matt. Stephen?
So I participated as a member of the public in these discussions, because of my business interest, which includes short-term rentals. But I did follow the emails from members of the committee that Denise just referenced. That I thought it was more than 15 questions, but maybe it was whittled down to that many. I think that is the roadmap that you're talking about, Matt. I think if those questions can be answered, if somebody can draw a direct line between short-term rentals as a use for properties and taking away from properties that otherwise would have been economically accessible to year-round residents, I think that paints the problem differently than it was presented to the committee and has been presented through Act Now. To say that we're losing, I'm going to get these statistics wrong, but you guys have all seen the emails, you know what I mean. we're losing a year-round house every 5.6 days. Well, is that true? I mean, let's put addresses to those things. And if it's not Act Now's responsibility in a vacuum to do it alone, the town should participate in that. But the Finance Committee tried to engage in a dialogue, and what happened in that second meeting was no specifics. There was no homework done. This is one observer, but I think that's what other people thought after watching that meeting.
Thank you, Stephen. Any further comments or questions? No? Okay. And then the last, I'm sorry, Jill. Sorry. Yeah. Good, Jill. Because you were on screen too, Jill. I couldn't see you waving.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't
Go
find
ahead.
the little hand quick enough. I just wanted to underscore what Stephen said, that what I learned this year more than anything going through these articles is the premise for why they brought the article forward became very important in our deliberations. So it wasn't just the result of what they were doing. I mean, this is my observation, and Denise, correct me if I'm wrong, but their reason for doing it. And with Article 90, they really emphasized that they thought this was going to help affordable housing. I actually think they would have had a better discussion had they not premised it on that.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, any other questions or comments? No? Okay. And then the last one that was new this year was Article 97, Home Rule Petition, reallocating land bank fees, and we motioned not to adopt. So that was our unanimous decision on that one. Any comments or questions? Now, I think one thing that's important, and I'll have Brian jump in as well. Thank you, Brian. So we approved we recommended as a finance committee to adopt, obviously, Articles 8, 10, and Article 24. If all those things get approved at town meeting and Article 24 gets approved at the ballot, affordable housing this year will get $15.4 million from the town and taxpayers of Nantucket. Is that correct, Brian? Do I have that correct?
You do. That is net of the amount that they have said they would put towards the debt service. That is an article that's also asked in the authorization of Article 10. So, but it is $15.4 million of actual dollars to put towards affordable housing. That is correct. So, and this financing also is immediate. So it isn't waiting for a 2/3 vote at town meeting. It's the most expedient way for them to get the funding they need to continue build out their projects on Orange Street, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, that's why in particular on 38 and 97, we were motioned not to adopt, because we felt $15.4 million is, as everyone will say, it's not sufficient. It is a significant amount of money, and it can go a long way toward keeping us in safe harbor and doing it in the most financially prudent, I guess is how I phrase it, way. So just wanted to connect the dots for the select board and the planning board members who are on this Zoom, so you understand why we did it this way. Stephen?
As chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, Brooke Moore represented in one of our meetings that the annual sum that they need to carry forward their plans was, and somebody will correct me, I think it was $5 million a year. Is that right? Yeah, 5 million. So we thought that, the articles that we motioned to adopt and the ones that we suggested not to move forward with, this was the right mix. We're giving well more than what they need to move forward. We're giving several years commitment now, which is a continuation of several years of major commitments in this area.
And then just to wrap up this, so Nat, thank you very much for the letter from the NP and EDC of March 16th, where you shared with us your committee's thoughts in respect of the articles. And on 11, 12, and 24, we did motion to adopt. 38, not to adopt, as I've said already. 67, motion not to adopt, same as in prior year. 68, motion take no action. 74, 90, and 97 motion not to adopt. So we were in alignment with your recommendation. So it was helpful to have your thoughts and, realizing we don't have to be aligned, because I think Judith and I can speak lengthily about the pool article as to how we're not aligned. We ended up in alignment with the recommendations, or the preference, or not the recommendations of the NP and EDC. So thank you for that. That was helpful for us during the course of our deliberations in what I'm still calling March Madness, in terms of 3 FinCom meetings a week. So, yeah.
Thank you,
So,
Denise.
thank you, Nat. And then just as a last point, the article, as I just pointed out, the article that we did diverge on with, 95% of planning's recommendations are the articles that we endorse the planning board's motion. We stayed, as we did last year, with motion not to adopt on the article in respect of pools. So that stayed the same for us this year as well. And with this, I am done with our report out from Finance Committee. And I invite any other comments or questions from anyone else who's here. Campbell, Sutton?
Yeah, sorry, I just had a quick question, because I did miss your discussion on the pools. And I know this year there was a great effort made to really hone in on what properties. So it wasn't like just a blanket no.
Campbell, can I ask Campbell that you let me present it before you ask for that, because they haven't heard anything from us yet.
Right.
Oh, okay. I thought they were just talking about
They're done, but I think we're next. So
Yep.
that way you can build off of what we might have to say, if that's in order, if you don't mind.
That's
Dawn,
fine for
if
me.
that's the
So
way you want to proceed.
Oh, yes, please, Judith.
But Denise, were you going to say something else?
no, I was gonna say, go ahead, Judith.
Okay, we didn't have all that many controversial matters this year. We're prepared to report on any of the numerous ones that are there. Many of them are related to further steps to implement the master plan that was adopted some time ago. We also commented on various individual petitioners' applications and recommendations. I don't think any of those really rise to the level of controversy. The controversy in the swimming pools is really, as Denise said, related to disagreement perhaps between us and FinCom. So that's Article 48. If you'd like to refer to that, that's listed at page 64 in the materials, and you can see it there. What it does is, it's the same as last year. It provides in targeted areas, particularly, but not only in the area near to the historic downtown area, provides for side and rear setbacks of where pools could be located to be 10 feet from adjacent property lines, and that would not go into effect until September 2021. Our thinking was as well that for people with, depending on how much acreage they have, they may be able to fit a pool as well as a secondary dwelling, as well as a home. But if they have a slightly more limited area than that, they could still choose between having a pool or having a secondary dwelling. Our rationale appears at bottom of page 65. This has been discussed by the planning board for 3 years, and we unanimously support it, which I have heard is not always the case in planning board recommendations. It's only, as I said, in the R1, SR1, and the R5, R5L districts, not the island as a whole. And the concerns were the adverse effects of impervious surface associated with swimming pools, so that if there's continuing heavy downpours of rain, if you have swimming pools where there really isn't a chance for that rain to run down into the ground, but it is limited by the fact that there's surface there that doesn't absorb it. It increases the risk of associated stormwater runoff that can affect other properties and roads in the area if they're prone to flooding. There's also, as I said, noise and light concerns with pool operation that have affected neighbors, particularly in areas that have smaller lots, and that tends to be true up to a point in the downtown. And it also tries to address this in a way that's fair to the property owners by giving them, as I said, a choice about which approach they might use to develop their land if they want to do that. So there may be comments from other members of the planning board. Campbell, I guess this would be the time for you to speak if you wanted to.
Thank you, Judith. Go ahead, Campbell.
Oh, I guess it sounds like your committee is going to make comment on this already. I just have a couple of concerns with it being denied by the FinCom. I think that, as I've said at planning board meetings, swimming pools are defined as a certain gallonage, right? So there's a certain number of gallons that will put you into a swimming pool. This does not affect spas or hot tubs or that sort of thing that are already existing in these districts close into town. And I think it's a quality of life issue. And I'd like people to keep that in mind and not just think about it as a finances, short-term rental. If I don't have a pool, well, I'm not going to be able to rent my property, or I'm not going to be able to sell my property. So I think we need to look at it as a quality of life issue, as well as in some of these areas that we're speaking of is in the Brant Point area. I think some of those areas are also going to become issues in the coastal resiliency issues that are going to be coming up, and whereby pools would really have a greater negative impact on the harbor than, say, your above ground hot tub or spa or something like that. Anyway, I was just trying to get some feedback from FinCom and get the idea out there that this is also a quality of life. You know, when pool equipment is right up against the property line and you only have 5,000 square feet, that other house is right there. So I'm going to be hearing in the bedroom your pool equipment, you know, all night. So again, that's coming back to the quality of life. But anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry.
Thank you, Campbell. Dawn?
When the planning board put in the article for ROH in regard to pools, a significant poll was done of all of the property owners to really build the consensus. And to me, then it became a property rights choice of the impacted people. And it was overwhelming that people wanted to limit pools in the ROH. I'm just wondering why something like that wasn't undertaken in this case, if the property owners that are impacted are really even fully aware that this is happening. And I'm concerned about that. It comes back to the sort of why are we doing this? And I tend to agree more with the finance committee's stance on it, but I'd like a little bit more information from the planning board on why this was undertaken, and is it something that the people who own properties in these districts want?
Thank you, Dawn. Judith? Yep,
if
Judith,
I can
go ahead.
respond to that, and then others may want to too. We felt that it had an impact not just on the property owners because of some of the environmental considerations, the runoff and things of that sort, that it wasn't narrowly only as to the property owners, and did not think that that would be needful in this instance. We also publicized it widely so that we had commentary. There was an earlier version of pool article 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago that Fritz McClure had proposed. So we had lots of testimony and all of it, but I think we're basing it based on what we've seen about property development and commentary from people when any of these things are being proposed. We don't have authority to review individual swimming pools. In some instances, that's a special permit before the Zoning Board of Appeals rather than us. But it's our considered judgment that it wasn't just something that should be left to the property owners for their decision. I know that's been an issue raised, and someone had asserted that the board had promised to do that. And I can tell you, since I've been on in 3 years, there wasn't any commitment by the board to do that. I don't know whether Leslie or Andrew would have more to add. I know that we tracked the data about how many pools had been proposed, where they were across the island, and things of that sort.
Matt?
I applaud the planning board for a unanimous motion on this. I think that's, that shows you the sort of give and take that happened on this issue, which I think is important. One thing that I had not thought about, I had thought about runoff and where does the water go? And we all know where the water goes. And I thought saltwater pools were safe. And when I was having my hip replaced, I had time to search the internet and realize they're worse than chlorine pools and realize how bad that is. But something I hadn't thought about is the amount of electricity to run pool pumps and the impact that will have on getting toward a third cable. We're doing over 100 pools a year at this point now, according to people who I've talked to. An electrician said, Matt, you have no idea how much energy this takes to, for the island. The amount of solar we're putting up is a tenth of what the pools are taking. And I had just not thought of that. So I think in a way it does impact all of us, but it's sort of hidden and we don't really see it. If we have to get to a third cable sooner because of issues like that, that's something that is going to be very difficult for everybody, and very expensive for everybody. So I think, I applaud the planning board and I hope that we think about the impact on everyone.
Dawn?
I'm just feeling like this is a little bit off base in terms of the issues that we're trying to solve. Energy use and environmental issues are generally covered by other things than zoning. And I still really feel like this is an overstep on property rights without people being polled who will actually be impacted. And I still go back to the original question of why is this even being undertaken? I mean, FinCom reviews these things environmentally. If you're on a 5,000 square foot lot and you're building a house and putting in a pool, you're probably, I would agree, not doing a secondary dwelling. So if we're talking about energy use, I would say that another dwelling on the property would be a lot more significant. And if we want to get into other things like traffic, I think that the pools actually help limit traffic because people stay on their properties more rather than traversing to the beach every single day. And we would have less cars on the road if someone chooses a pool over a secondary dwelling. So those were just a few points I wanted to make.
Thank you, Dawn. Stephen, Judith, wait, please, Stephen, and then I'll come back to you.
Well, yeah, just along the lines of Dawn's point about polling and Judith, I don't remember what year you joined the planning board, but I think you were there in 2019 when this came up the first time. And I'll just read from the planning board comment on that article. It said, this was printed in the town warrant, after extensive discussion, the planning board determined that prior to any proposed changes to swimming pool regulations, more study, public outreach, and consideration is needed. So I think, that was, the crux of the issue at the time, was more public outreach was needed. And I don't think any was done. And I remember from those meetings that planning staff, Andrew specifically asked, do you want staff to work on a poll for you guys? And the planning board said no. So, I think I agree with Don here. This doesn't seem to be coming from a public concern. This seems to be, an issue for certain individuals.
Thank you, Stephen. Judith?
Stephen, that didn't refer to a poll, and we've had, I've been to Civic League multiple times. We've talked about it in other hearings. That proposal back in 2018 is the one I mentioned that Fritz McClure proposed, that was much more extensive, that was island-wide, that was quite a different proposal. So just to be clear, the context for that. To Don's point, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to go back and forth with debate at length, but I just want to clarify, swimming pools are development of land just as housing is. So I'm surprised to hear someone say that what is developed on property is not the province of the planning board, because in my experience as somebody who taught that field for many years and so on, it's essential because it's really related to what can be done nearby, the enjoyment of adjacent property owners and everything of that sort. Concom's jurisdiction relates to wetlands. That's not what we're talking about here. So you may disagree with it, and I know both of you have background as realtors, so you have a different view on it than maybe I would have, since that's not my background. And I'm sure you bring that to bear, and that's good expertise to have in the conversation. I just want to be clear as best I can that I think saying that it's only a question that every decision and anything to be done to have to go out and poll people about it when it's something we've observed difficulties about around the island, but we're narrowing it very precisely here to the area near the downtown and to the R5 areas, that we can tell you more about how many pools and everything are there if you want, but I'm not sure that that's helpful to you at this point. We probably have said all we can say, and if you don't agree with it, then that's your prerogative.
Yeah, I think at this point, Dave, I'll call on you in a minute. I mean, obviously, this is a topic that will get decided on June 5th by the voters. And so, Finance Committee made its motion primarily on the back of when we discussed this in person in March 2019, because that's the last time we were all in person, when we had to make a motion on this the first time. It came down to property rights for us, and it came down to were you able to poll the 770 people's property who would have been affected by this motion? And so that was the fundamental foundation of why we decided this 2 years ago and kept the motion in place now. And it will get decided June 5th. So clearly there's pluses and minuses on both sides. And while the discussion is interesting, I'm not sure it gets us anywhere right now, to be honest. So Dave, did you want to add to this, or shall I draw a line under it?
I would just like to add, I mean, I understand that part of the reason that makes this discussion so difficult is the economics of pools. And I think that we understand it at the planning board, and we get it. And that's not really the issue for us. I think part of the reason why we worked hard on this article was, as town expands, as people subdivide, we talk a lot about people's property rights, but people buy in a certain area because they like it. Town expands, more subdivision happens. And so, all of a sudden you live in a quaint neighborhood with 10,000 square foot lots, and it was quiet, there was space, and then all of a sudden you're R5 and someone comes in and splits the lot in half, and you have 2 houses and 2 pools. So we tried to give people an option with living at 75 where they could either have it either way, and try to preserve those neighborhoods as best we could. It's not necessarily about what one person likes or what one person doesn't. It's about trying to kind of buffer suffer the pain of the continual subdivision that seems to be going on just outside of town.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Denise,
Nat, are you raising your
Denise,
hand or
can
you
I
just waving
say
at me?
something? Yeah, I'm raising my hand. Thank you. So thank you for this very contentious and emotional issue conversation. What Dave just said is pretty accurate as far as like where this sort of originated. This is not new. This is, well, I guess it is 3 years kind of now, isn't it? But when Fritz's original article, this sort of hatched from what Dave is talking about, like up at the Russell Pope property. If you look at those lots now, I mean, all the R1 just outside of the ROH, you know, people don't realize the subdivision potential is unbelievable. And, you know, and that's where this came from. Now, at the time, I'm not jumping up and down in favor of this, just so you know. I voted in favor of bringing this article to town meeting, and that was my reasoning. I didn't want a big argument at the planning board level for this article. Okay, I like to be as fair as I can. I like to be as non-argumentative when something is more for the island to decide. It's sort of like car limits and carrying capacity and air conditioners in the late 90s. Everybody wanted to get rid of them too. You know, there's always something coming along that we want to get rid of. The problem is pools there's almost 1,000 swimming pools in Nantucket. I think the number is like 990 right now. And it isn't just, people with money that have a swimming pool. Dawn indicated, actually, that's very interesting. When I was growing up and Matt was growing up here, nobody at beach had no parking left. Okay, so people are staying home and enjoying their property. It isn't just pools, it's fire pits, barbecues, cabana things. I mean, everybody's staying home today more than they used to with their own sort of creativity of recreation and the things that have changed over time, the amenities that people have. So it's really, for some people, I think it's about noise. For other people, it's other issues. I personally think that there's more noise capability with other things that go on in people's yards that I don't think there's somebody going to be trying to regulate some of the things that cause a lot of noise beyond the pools. However, that is a fact. Now, as far as the noise bylaw that we just looked at, I think that some of the decibels, I'm not sure exactly what, the science of it, but swimming pool pumps are allowed. Okay, that's true. Some air conditioning units allowed. Some of the newer ones are a lot quieter than they were. Pool pumps can be put underground. They can build things to make them quieter. They can be in your basement. So that there's a way around the noise issue. That isn't something that isn't fixable. The swimming pool itself is quiet. It depends on who's in it. Okay, it doesn't make any noise when there's nobody in it. So, I just want to get back to the A&R thing, though, that Dave talked about. So we came up with this number 75. That sort of was something that John Trudeau and I kind of looked at with some of these lots. But the architecture with swimming pools has changed. There's a lot of pools, these plunge pools that are a lot smaller. And they're deep, but they're small. And they tuck in behind these houses. And you can't even see them, some of them. So I personally think, as well as the setback issue Judith brought up earlier, the setback issue is a no-brainer. I think that there's some problems with the hardscaping can be in the setback. I think so the edge of the pool can be right there. So I think that the 10 foot from 5 on the R1 and the R5 makes a lot of sense. I think that is a, something that everybody can kind of agree on and kind of pull the pool in a little bit. But, it's a complicated issue. okay? I mean, there's a lot of points to be made about it, but I don't agree that it's a rich person thing anymore. I mean, it is obviously in most cases, but there are more locals putting in swimming pools than one might believe. And a lot of them have them and have had them for a long time. So I just think that this was sort of, in my mind, something to get off the table. In other words, we did the ROH one, and I think that was pretty well done how that ended up happening. But as far as like this issue popping up, town meeting has to get rid of it. And that's the way I sort of saw it. You're either going to adopt it or they're not. So I asked my board to consider lowering the square footage, and that was disagreed. So that is the reason that I still supported the article going to town meeting with a positive recommendation. But at the same time, I think that it's something that the voters need to decide. So that's where I sit on it. And, I'm not one to cause a lot of commotion at meetings unless it's something I feel really strongly about for a specific application. And, but in this particular case, this is something that's not going to go away. It's going to pop up again for other parts of the island. We have to deal with this with MMD zoning, which is another whole can of worms with that. But I think that we need to once and for all sort of either adopt it or not at town meeting. And that's how I feel about it. So thank you,
Nat.
Denise, for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Nat. Okay. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. I mean, last year or 2 years ago, when we could still meet in person, the select board reviewed our motions kind of at the 11th hour because we're always on a really tight schedule. And we just didn't have a chance to have a sensible discussion on any of them because, we do it so quickly. So I think this is a step in the right direction. And I do appreciate all the select board members who do jump on our finance committee meetings when you can, understanding that, we're pretty busy in February and March, and it's hard to make all of our meetings. So fascinating, though, as you can tell, they are. I don't know why more people don't show up, but that's okay. And but with that, I do appreciate the collaboration. I think it's important. And Judith, thank you as well for you and the planning board for when we're able to collaborate, because we do it, 99% of the time. And, at the end of the day, folks, it's the voters. They'll decide on June 5th. On all of the things. So as we know on finance committee, we've made recommendations and based on all our deliberations, and it's really up to the voters to decide, and they will. So is there any other comments prior to me asking for, I guess Dawn, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say I appreciate all of the work that both of your boards do, getting us ready for town meeting and putting so much time and effort into the entire process.
Thank you, Dawn. Judith, do you want to close your planning board, and then I'll ask Dawn to close select board, and then finance committee? You'll be the last people standing.
Is there a motion to adjourn from the planning board? Nat,
If that's what everyone wants, I'll make that motion.
And I think I heard a second. Was that John?
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Nat?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Judith? Aye. So we stand adjourned, planning board. We'll see you next Monday for our meeting.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you.
Dawn, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn the select board meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
By roll call, Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. May I have a motion to adjourn finance committee?
So
Thank you. May I have a
Second.
second? Thank you, George. Roll call, George,
Aye.
Peter,
aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Stephen, Joanna,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
and always Erica, Libby, Brian, Rick, all the folks that help us be as efficient as we are. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. And obviously tomorrow's meeting will be canceled because we were very efficient and did it all today. So a found evening, everyone. Go wild.
Denise, sorry, it's Erica. Before you go, Leslie has her hand raised.
Oh, Leslie, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
I was kind of late raising it. I have a question about the current draft of the warrant. The FinCom did make motions to support all of the planning board articles except for the pool, but that's not printed in the warrant. Is the format changing for this year, or has that just not been added yet?
It's
That
not a
would be-
motion, it's a comment.
It's a comment.
So
Right.
will the comment be printed in the warrant, or is
Yeah,
it?
it's in there already, Leslie. You might not have the current version.
Okay.
Because it just says Finance Committee does not support the planning board motion. And also I just emailed you because there's a word missing, I think, in the planning board comment. It's an administrative thing. We can figure it out, but check your email.
So on the ones that the Finance Committee did support the planning board motion, will that be printed? Usually is.
Yeah. I'm looking through it right now to see. Actually, I don't see those in there at this point.
What we usually do, right, Libby?
I think so. Hold on a minute.
I mean, honestly, Finance Committee, you can go. This is, you can stay and watch this fascinating discussion, or you could go. I'll stay on with Libby and Leslie.
It's usually a Finance Committee comment. The committee supports planning board motion. So we'll get those added in. We were scrambling to get this done for this meeting, so there's probably some stuff missing.
Thank you.
And as long as we have admin questions going, Libby, when is the last time you need comments? Because we might add a few comments to some of our motions. We were working on getting motions done, not just comments. So when do you need them by?
Well, Erica, we're scheduled to get a printer by the end of next week. So really ASAP. Select board is having a discussion about their comments this Wednesday. They may or may not adopt them. If they don't, they have another discussion scheduled for next Wednesday.
Okay. So the 16th is a drop dead date.
I would say the 15th.
Yeah, really.
I have to get it to the printer and
We have to
everybody
frame
else.
out and do final formatting stuff. So the sooner the better, like early next.
Thursday, the 15th is the absolute drop dead.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.